need an hour in the morning.
You might just stay.
Spice.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
You need skin names.
For how many, for 24 months.
You can check the
weeks.
weeks.
Yeah, that's good. I
You'll have to go to your-
would open up a McCullough, sell it for $3.99, I could do it with the gas.
Yeah, it's good.
Or not even.
Broken.
What is it?
I think so, airbag.
They close your airbag.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for that. Wouldn't want, no.
Ran my finger over the ledge. School I would have. You all right? Straight. We made a market. Okay. Aye. Okay. So, we're gonna get going.
Many people thought this was nothing.
Get going.
You know, after.
It's for reaching, no rush. Yeah. You wanna get them. Well, no, I've already done one. Most of those days, they show up, go through, sort out with. Okay, sure.
But you don't have to do that, unless you're gonna agree with it.
Already.
It's money, it's
Kind of super bills, but we can have a
busy couple of weeks.
So otherwise, I'm like, I really sit with too much, so many stuff, but I can use it, you know, it's always, bitter. It's just,
It's a lesson, but I'm glad that Mulberry down.
oh.
One that stump is there for weight. There's two different stumps, one is huge, so it's not bad.
Yeah.
The one is small.
Doing my father, so, batteries, yeah, it's nice. Right, that's hard for kids, but the families, kids, the older.
Okay. All right. Okay, so we were just looking at the Shulchan Aruch. I said we would look at the Shulchan Aruch yesterday. Choshen Mishpat in Zion. Okay, do the whole chapter. Okay, so Shnaim shehilvu o hifkidu le'echad. So if two people lent money to one individual, uba echad mehem litol chelko, and then one comes to collect the debt that, his half, ein shomin lo ad sheyavo chavero. We don't listen to him until his friend shows up. And the question is why, right? So if we were to look at the Aruch HaShulchan, which is what the Ohlei Yaakov had instructed us to do, Os Yud Aleph. Okay, so if we take a look, in Os Yud Aleph, he tells us as follows. Shnaim shehilvu o hifkidu le'echad. Just share the screen. Shnaim shehilvu o hifkidu le'echad, uba echad mehem litol chelko ein shaman lo ad sheyavo chavero. So he says this: you don't pay back a debt that you when you borrowed from two unless both parties show up to collect the debt. The kamosh kibel mishnayim kain tzarich limsor lishnayim. That this, in the same way that you received the money from two people in the loan, you also have to repay the loan with two. He doesn't say why. V'lachein tzarich lahodia lehasheni sheyavo gamhu v'yikablu shneim. And therefore, if the first guy comes, you have to let the second guy know that he has to come as well, so that the two of them can get paid back at the same time. V'imhu ba'ir v'hodiuhu v'lo ba, tzarich litein lazeh hatovea hakol, devadai nichalei sheyushlucha lekabel esachov o hapikado. He says if the second creditor is available, but he just doesn't want to come, then you may assume that he is allowing his partner to collect on his behalf, and you give the full amounts to the partner. De'im lo kain lama lo ba, because why? Because why wouldn't he want to show up? So let's see if there's a shach over here, because the
One is lending to two people, or two people?
two people are lending to one person. Why do we not listen to him? I guess maybe the concern is that maybe this person has gone rogue on the partnership, and therefore you can't necessarily trust that he has his partner's best interests in mind, unless you get express permission from the other creditor that you can give the full amounts to the one person. Aval kol zman shahasheni eini yodeya lo yitein lahatoveya afilu chelko. But as long as the second creditor is unaware that his partner is collecting the debt, you can't give him anything. You can't even give him half of the debt. The afal gav deladun imo al chelko mechuyev ladun imo af kashen hasheni bekan kamo sheyizboer mikol makom limsor liyado chelko ein biyacholto below yediyas hasheni. Mipnei hatam shekasavnu the kamosh kibel mishnayim kamochein tzarich limsor lishnayim. He says, even though you're going to have to adjudicate with each one of the parties separately if there is some kind of conflict or disagreement, but you can't just unilaterally give him any amount, even half the amount, because there's an assumption that whenever a transaction takes place with two parties, the counter transaction or whenever a loan takes place with two people, you have to return it with two people. Some say that this halacha only applies is if you don't know how much each party kicked in. In other words, let's say that some people want to suggest that the reason for this is that, well, maybe one guy gave 60% and the other guy gave 40%, and they just haven't disclosed to you how much each party decided to lend. And that's the reason why you can't give him half the amount back. But if you know how much each person lent, then you should give each person separately. According to that opinion, according to that, if a person left an object for or an amount of money for safekeeping with someone else, and then that person who's owned the object passes away, and he has two sons, let's say a person that I owe money to passes away, and he has two heirs. According to that opinion, since you know that each heir is that the estate is being split equally between the two heirs, I can give each one what I owe a half, I can give each one half separately, according to that opinion. Mihu afilu l'dea rishona im hatovea notein amatla shemityarei lahaniach hamot o hapikadon biyado shel zeh uritzanu sheyanichenu biyad beis din ta'anoso taina. However, if the debtor says, the guy, is paying back the loans, is, I'm not so sure that I feel comfortable giving you the half the money when your partner is not present. I'm going to leave it with Beis Din, with some kind of escrow account that Beis Din can adjudicate upon, and then you can collect it off. That you have a right to do. Afilu al kol hachov v'motziim miyado shel zeh umosrin liyad Beis Din v'chein kesheni b'merchakim ba'ofen she'efshar lo hodiu nosnin lazeh hatovea chelko gam l'deya harishona de'ein svar chlal la'akev ma'osav shel zeh mipnei hasheni keven she'efshar lo hodio v'chelko shel sheni yunach biyad Beis Din o biyad halova o hanifkad imhu eno batuach. So, and then he says, and if you know how much each person has invested, then everyone would agree that if one of the partners is unavailable or out of town, you can give the one partner his half portion. V'chein af kishahasheni be'ir v'hodiuhu v'lo bash tzarich limsar kol ha'tovea כמו שכספתי, מכל מקום אם הלויבה או הנפקד אינו רוצה ליתן לזה רק חלקו, וחלק האחר ימסר לבייס דין הרשוס בידו, דאין הפסד בזה להשני, אפילו יום המדינו דייתו שרצונו ששות ויקבל. He says, and let's say the second partner is available and just refuses to come. So we said in that case, you could give the whole amount to the one partner, because we assume that the reason he doesn't want to come is because he trusts his partner to collect the whole amount. But if the debtor feels uncomfortable doing that, he could leave half of it in an escrow account, if that's the case. And the Aruch HaShulchan basically says that if you can assume that the one partner needs all of the money in order to be able to reinvest it on behalf of the both of them, then you should give him the full amount. The bottom line is that this is not a hard rule. It's not a hard rule. When two people lend a person money, generally speaking, the preferred method of repayment is that both should be present. It could be for a number of reasons. One reason could be is that you're not sure whether they both invested equally into this loan. And so therefore, to just split the debt in half and give each one half is not necessarily the correct thing. There could be other reasons as well. It could be that maybe there's a desire that the other partner has, that he wants to see the repayment to both of them, because maybe he doesn't fully trust his partner. And maybe, maybe he doesn't, or maybe there may be personal reasons why he doesn't want his partner to get paid back the money without his being present. There could be any number of reasons. But the fact is that if two people are involved in a loan, that you should pay them back jointly when it's time to repay the loan. Generally speaking, that's the halacha, but there are exceptions. So for example, according to one opinion, if you know exactly how much each person has put down for the loan, if they've split it 50-50, then you could give each one separately. But you also have the option of saying, I'm not comfortable until your partner is present. I'm leaving it with Beis Din, and when the two of you come to Beis Din, you can come and collect.
Is he responsible if he pays the other partner being there?
What do you mean, is he
He
responsible?
doesn't know that it's like one partner did the 60, the other partner did 40, and he gave what the 40 partner, he gave actually 50% back. Is he personally responsible?
Could be he is. It's a good point, but it could be he will be financially responsible.
So this would be a situation where the two lenders had arranged to give the money, as opposed to the borrower going to two separate lenders to
Correct.
to make up.
That's right. That's right. He didn't go to two people separately. He went to
one.
He went to someone's office, and this is a business that is owned by two partners.
Right.
And he sat down with both partners and he says, guys, I need a loan. And they said, okay, we'll lend you the money. And it's an oral loan. And that's the reason why you have to be more careful about the repayment. Okay.
Remember you mentioned in terms of where the father who owed the money passed away and the payment will go back to, let's say, to the estate.
Yeah.
You're assuming that what happens in the estate, if the father willed it, that, this one gets 70% of my estate. This
Right. So you would have to know how the estate is being divided. There would have to be some kind of evidence about how the estate is being divided in order for you can't just assume it's being cut in half. Okay, let's go on to the next halacha. The shaila is Mishi hivtiach lahalvos leploni sikum shel kesef. We saw this as well. Va'achshav hu rotze lachzor bo mehavtachaso. A guy told his friend, "I'll lend you the money," and then he wants to back out because he spoke to his wife, like we said, right? Ha'im nechshav kekabala the dvar mitzvah ve'enu yachol lachzor bo ela im kein yaseh haTorah bifnei shlosha. So when a person gave his commitment, the question is, it's like, do we view this as a person who committed to do a mitzvah? And a person who commits to do a mitzvah and doesn't end up being able to do it needs a hataras nedarim. You need to get an annulment in front of a tribunal, in front of a beis din. So is that necessary here as well? So the tshuva is im hivtiach liYisrael lahalvoto sikum shel kesef yesh lo lihizaher milachzor bo. You have to be careful. If you gave someone an assurance that you would lend them money, you have to. You're not allowed to back out on your word. Dehu kechol kapola lidvar mitzvah shenasa neder she'aser lachzor bo. Because anytime you accept upon yourself to do a mitzvah, you have to fulfill your obligation. And this is certainly true if the commitment was to a gamach, that you're not allowed to retract. Now, there's another reason, which is you're a mechusar amana, which he doesn't make note of over here. Remember, we learned the law of mechusar amana at the very beginning when we started Imrei Yaakov. A mechusar amana is a person who makes a financial commitment and then fails to follow through on that financial commitment. And that could be true if a person says he's going to buy something, or if he's going to sell something, or if he's going to give you a gift, or if he's going to lend you money. Yeah, so he's looking at it from the perspective of, well, you committed to do a mitzvah, you got to follow through. But there's even more than that. It's not just from the mitzvah perspective. It's from the financial commitment perspective, that if a person makes a financial commitment and backs and does not follow through on his word, he's called a mechusar amana, person who acts in poor faith, which according to many has the status of a rasha. So you never want to be put in that situation. Of course, there are circumstances where you would not be a bad guy. So for example, let's say you made a commitment, a financial commitment, and then something happens to your business. The stock market crashes and you're not able to follow through on your commitments. When it comes to tzedakah, you probably still have to get a hataras nedarim, though. When it comes to charitable donations, you probably need to get a hataras nedarim, I would imagine. But okay, so that's what you'll do. But you wouldn't be necessarily a mechusar amana because you had every intention of following through, but the financial circumstances changed. Okay? Next, chiyuv hashavas ashtar b'shas apiron. Returning the promissory note. You as a creditor have to return the promissory note to the borrower when he pays back the debt. So, mishalava b'shtar v'giyazman apiron shabalifro eschovo amalva omer she'en hu motze achshavas ashtar. So a guy is ready to pay back his debt, but when he comes to pay it back, the lender says, I can't find the note. So is there an can the debtor now say, okay, listen, here's the cash. When you come up with the promissory note, this will be yours. Until then, sayonara. Oh, yifralo uchashiyim samalvis ashtar yikras ashtar. Or can the guy say, here's the money, I trust you. When you find the note, just tear it up. Is that acceptable?
They're also getting another piece of paper and this.
That's what I was thinking.
Right. And look,
There is that concept discussed by the Gemara called a shovar. Shovar is a receipt, and it basically supersedes the promissory note and basically says that the debt was paid and any promissory notes are null and void. However, the debtor, the borrower, could say, I don't want to have to be burdened with having to walk around with a receipt. That means what I got to keep in my wallet for the next 10 years,
Within the lender has the right to say, I'm not giving the cash until you find the promissory note. If he's not prepared to.
You mean the borrower?
The borrower, yeah.
Yeah.
The borrower, if he's not prepared to find the.
Well, that's
No.
that's the shaila.
'Cause then
What
he
is
can do
what does a creditor do if he genuinely can't find it? He's misplaced it.
He also may have negotiated it to a third party, right? Signed it and then someone else has signed it to somebody else
Uh-huh.
who's now in another city.
There you go.
Or something.
No,
That's right.
I mean.
That's right.
An open promissory note is an open promissory note, so if it's out there,
It's negotiable.
potentially, you can complain on us.
Yeah. So the response is as follows. Mi shalava bishtar, if a person did borrow money and a promissory note was written up, kol zman she'eino machzor lo hamalvis hashtar, ein halo v'tzarach lifroz chovo ad shamal v'yachzir shtaro. So long as the lender does not come up with the paper, the borrower does not have to pay back the loan. Va'afilu im hamalva yirtze lichtov lo shovar, eino chayiv lifro'lo. Even if the lender says, I'll write a receipt, I'll give you a receipt, and that'll supersede the note, the lova can say, I'm not interested. But that's only when the lender says, I have the note. It's a schlep for me to get it because it's in another city. Just do me a solid and give me the money. Aval im hamal v'toyin she'avar ashtar, tzarech lifroa hacho v'hamal v'yichdav lo sholo. But if the lender says, I can't find it, I've looked everywhere for it and it's lost, or there was a fire in my office where I kept my papers and it was burned, in both of those scenarios, the borrower does have to pay back the loan and he has to accept a receipt. V'im chosheh shalova, sheyachol lavo lidei hefsed me'ovdan hashtar, kegon shashtar yavo lidei guvayna shelo b'yediaso. But let's say the borrower is fearful that he could incur a loss because of these circumstances. Maybe someone else will pick up this shtar, like Marv said. Maybe the lender is a shark and he's already sold the debt. Yachol levakesh mehamalva sheyekablu lo v'acharayus v'yiten lo bitchonos al kol hefsed sheyavu machmas ovdan hashtar. Then the borrower has a right to say that when you write the receipt, you have to also write a clause. I guess you need a lawyer for this that says, I hereby accept upon myself any liability, any financial liability that may come about as a result of this loan, an indemnity, right? I hereby indemnify the borrower from any further financial responsibility. There you go.
So I'm confused. It said that even with a receipt that the borrower can refuse to give the money in the first paragraph, and then
In which situation? When the lender claims,
he hasn't got
when the lender, listen carefully, when the lender says, I have the note, but no, when the lender claims, I have the note, I know where it is, but it's going to take me, I'm not going to be able to access it for another month. He has it, he knows where it is, but it's a big pain in the neck for him to have to get it because it's in Poughkeepsie instead of being in Toronto. So he says, do me a favor, just, you owe me the money, give me the money. And when I get to Poughkeepsie next month, I'll tear it up. the borrower has every right to say, no, thank you. Okay. That's where the borrower has a right to refuse. When does the borrower not have the right to refuse? When the lender says, I don't have the note. I've looked everywhere for it. I can't find it. Or if he says it was destroyed in a fire or or it was, okay.
I thought in the first paragraph you read that if even with it, that even if the lender offered to write a receipt for the money, that the borrower could still refuse to.
In which case, it depends on the case. If the case is where the lender says, I have the note, but it's a burden for me to have to find it, then the borrower can refuse even when the lender is willing to write a receipt. Because the borrower can legitimately say, why? Because it's inconvenient for you to retrieve the note, do I have to bear the burden of having to hold on to this paper, hold on to the receipt, right? But when the lender says, I don't know where it is, I don't have it, it's lost or something like that, it's destroyed, then the borrower must pay back the debt. He has to take a receipt.
And get it.
He can also request an indemnification. He can request from the lender write in the receipt that you hereby free me from any financial responsibility that may arise in the future as a result of this law. Right? That would be the way to write it.
Somebody comes in, tries to sue me for it, we'll cover that.
That's right. That's right. All right, pretty straightforward. Okay. Okay, let's say next shaila. Misha misupak im lova mechavera. If a person doesn't remember whether or not he borrowed money from a friend. Okay, he just doesn't remember. Okay, v'chaveru toin shabori lo shil v'lo sikum kesef kach b'kach. And his friend says, I know that I lent you the money. You may not remember, but I remember. You owe me $100. Okay. And the guy says, are you sure I borrowed $100 from you? And he says, yeah, I know you did. So ha'im yeshalav, remember when we were at the bar and you wanted to bet on this horse and you didn't have any cash. So I spotted you. Ha'im yeshalav chiyuv l'shalem. Kaven shechavero borilo shenasan lo halva. So what's the halacha in that case? Do we say hamotzi mechavero of haraya in a case where of bori v'shema, where the creditor is certain and the debtor is uncertain? Or so is that because hamotzi mechavero olav lahavi raya upater mitashlum umidi chiyuv let's say yidei shamayim chayav alaf mechiyim yidei shamayim pater. And then the next part is, and if you're going to tell me hamotzi mechaver olav haraya, what about to be yotze yidei shamayim? Because the guy says, listen, I lent you $100. We didn't write up any paper. There were no witnesses, but I know for sure that you owe me $100. The guy says, I don't remember. So because it was maybe a year ago or whatever it was. So hamotzi mechaver olav haraya, fine. But do I have any heavenly responsibility? Like, is Hashem going to punish me for not having paid back my debts? So there's sort of two parts to this question. Number one, what is my halachic responsibility? And number two, what is my heavenly responsibility? Meaning that even if halachically I can blow the guy off, but is Hashem going to take me to account on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur because I have outstanding debts? Okay, so here's the answer. Misha misupak im lova mechavero, v'hala toin bori shilveyu. So I don't remember, but the guy tells me that for sure he knows that I owe him the money. So yeshlo lihishava shvuas hesed she'eni odeya upater mitashlo. So it could be Sephardim still do shavuas in Beis Din, but we don't do these shavuas anymore. But a person can exempt himself and say, I don't have to pay until you bring me proof. The afal pisha midine adam pater aval chayv latzes yidei shamayim u'l'shalim. And even though that's the halacha as far as The Beis Din is concerned. Nonetheless, a person has a heavenly duty to make a guy who claims that I owe him money, I have to give him the money.
Wouldn't it be better in that case not to make the shul at all, not even avoid the whole shul thing, right, and just pay him anyway? Like,
In that case, yeah, just pay the guy. Ve'ima tovea gam kein mesupakim hilvalo, pater hanitva afilu latzos yedei shamayim. But let's say both parties are uncertain. And so I go over to Ron and I say, Ron, don't you remember, didn't I lend you $100? And Ron says, I know there was something, but I think I paid you back. And I say, you paid me back? I don't remember. Are you sure? And Ron says, no, I'm not sure. I'm not sure either. So then what do? So then Ron has no halachic responsibility, even yedei bidei shamayim. Because if neither party knows what the story is, so then there's no halachic responsibility for one person to give another person money. V'chein im yodeya shalava miploni ela shemesupak im paro. So this is the case. If a guy knows for sure that he borrowed money from someone, but he doesn't remember whether he paid him back, v'hamal v'toin bori shehilvelo, and the lender says, I know for sure I lent you the money, and I don't have any record of you paying me back, chayav b'dinei adam. Then, once the guy acknowledges that he did borrow the money, and he says, I don't know if I paid you back, then there's an assumption that he owes the money. V'im hamalva mesupakim paralo ilav yesh lelova latzeis yidei shamayim u'lashalim lamalva. If, let's say, we know the loan transpired, but neither of us know whether I paid it back or not, so yidei shamayim, I should pay the person back. Ela imkein omer hamalva shebevadai she'enu chayev lo, as I potter af latzeis lidei chiyuv yidei shamayim. Unless the lender says, you don't owe me anything. In other words, if the lender says, forget about it. Neither of us remember whether you paid me back, but I don't want your money. I only want to take money from you if I know that you owe it to me. But neither of us remember, so you don't owe me anything. If the malva says that, if the lender says that, so then even yidei shamayim, you don't have to worry. We'll hold it here for today. Okay.